You may deem me romantic, my dear sister, but I bitterly feel the want of a friend. I have no one near me, gentle yet courageous, possessed of a cultivated as well as of a capacious mind, whose tastes are like my own, to approve or amend my plans. How would such a friend repair the faults of your poor brother? I am too ardent in execution and too impatient of difficulties. But it is still a greater evil to me that I am self-educated. For the first 14 years of my life I ran wild on a common, and read nothing but our Uncle Thomas's books of voyages. At that age I became acquainted with the celebrated poets of our own country, but it was only when it had ceased to be in my power to derive its most important benefits from such a conviction that I perceived the necessity of becoming acquainted with more languages than that of my native country. Now I am 28, and and am in reality more illiterate than many schoolboys of 15. It is true that I have thought more, and that my daydreams are more extended and magnificent, but they want, as the painters call it, keeping, and I greatly need a friend who would have sense enough not to despise me as romantic, and affection enough for me to endeavor and to regulate my mind. Mary
Mm.
Shelley from Frankenstein. So, firstly, what I want to say about this quote is
Yeah.
we look at the first part. You may deem me romantic, my dear sister. I just want to dive into this a little bit.
Hmm.
I think when we are young, especially, no matter kind of who we are, we're always kind of seen, let's say, as men, we're always kind of seen as like a sweet boy who's very innocent and, uh, he does his own thing. Maybe nowadays he plays some video games, he keeps to
Yeah.
himself, whatever have you. But
Right.
deep down, we don't even know it because maybe we're young or whatnot. I mean, the person in this quote is obviously a bit older, but we want a friend. We want someone who's near us, who's gentle yet courageous, pushes us beyond our bounds, right? And whose tastes are like your own, Similar
Yeah.
people attract each other. And really something that struck out to me is uh, the idea that I perceive the necessity of becoming acquainted with more languages than that of my native country. I think the native country in this sense applies that, or means that he is thinking about what only the books that he has read, and the more
Mm.
languages means other people's viewpoints.
Yeah.
So
Right.
he thinks that he's more illiterate than many schoolboys of 15, maybe because these schoolboys of 15 are congregating with each other, they're talking about ideas, even if they're not even if maybe they're just at a surface level, he still feels that those boys of 15 have more languages than that of their own, which he himself has chosen to just read Uncle Thomas's books of voyages, for example, or something like that. And he
Right.
says that, oh, he's thought more because maybe he reads these books and he's been older and wiser or whatever, but he just wants that second person to kind of bounce ideas off of, to learn more languages, to not treat you as a romantic, sweet boy, but someone who's trying to find their place in this world. Sven, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah. I mean, we're all kind of a portal of knowledge to each other. So the part of the quote says to approve or amend my plans. You see, if he was going to be reading Uncle Thomas's Book of Voyages and he was like, okay, I'll read the next book. To have a friend that says, oh, if you like that book, I actually read this book. You should try reading this, and it's different. You actually have now taken that knowledge from your friend and are able to, learn new things that you wouldn't have done if no one told you to do that. So to approve or to amend plans is actually going off of what you normally would have done if you were by yourself, which, you wouldn't grow as much. But it can also go both ways. You can have people that can, approve or amend your plans in ways that actually may not be as beneficial. It goes both ways, but
Yeah, it's a good point.
yeah.
Uh, so that's a quick discussion about our quote for today. We're already about 4 minutes in, so let's get to
Yeah.
a quick story about me and Sven's friendship. So, my name is Karthik. The guy on the other side of the mic we call him Sven. His real name's
Yep.
Tommy.
Yep.
Um, so quick story about our friendship. We uh met, what is it, man? Like more than 3 years ago. Uh,
Yeah.
we met playing Rocket League initially. Some of you might have heard of it. And I just kind of saw Sven as like, oh, he wants to play some Rocket League. Sure, we'll play. Why not?
Right.
Talk to somebody. But over the years, he's become kind of like a pillar of giving me more languages than I could even think that I even know. Like I might think
Yeah.
like, oh, I got a big head, and then Sven's like, huh, you sure about that? So he over the years he's taught me how to think, how to engage with the world. He's introduced me to Stoicism, which I've been a big fan of for
Yeah.
the past few months at least. Really trying to employ different strategies that he's been telling me. Uh, you know, I used to watch lectures about Alan Watts, and now I'm reading one of his books. I didn't even tell you yet, but I'm reading, I don't know if you've heard of the book by Alan Watts. Um,
I'm not sure.
it is mad complicated, but
Well,
you know,
the paragraph you sent me there, we can maybe discuss another time. But that was a good, that was a good paragraph from you.
yeah, definitely. Um, so you just, you engage me with these deep conversations that we had over many years, and now I just kind of want to spread kind of that idea of like how to have a deep conversation, how to like metaphorically like or even literally kick back a beer and just talk about life.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the feeling's mutual. I mean, a lot of times when we talk about our lives and we go back and forth about what's going on, it's like a little therapy session, but it's just two friends, really getting to know each other and like figuring things out together. And, having someone like that's very good because saying things out loud is different than thinking about things in your head. People sometimes will write things down, it'll be a lot more effective. So having someone to talk to can be very effective and actually, both sides can benefit in that way.
Yeah, I think when you bounce ideas off of each other, you're really not, I wouldn't say like it's like when you bounce, let's say you throw a ball off of the wall, or let's say you throw a ball so hard it just bounces back and forth. I
Yeah.
think when you bounce ideas, you kind of like you throw a ball at a wall and that ball comes back and it has some like elements of the wall with it. Like it maybe
Yeah.
takes some of those atoms of the wall and it comes back and it hits the other wall and it takes some atoms of that wall and it comes
Right.
back. And that idea, I guess the idea of like bouncing ideas off of each other just really means that like you're trying to, I guess, employ more brain power to
Yeah.
solve a problem that you maybe you don't even think you should understand fully.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they say intelligence is defined by, being able to solve problems. Usually that means getting creative. So when you have multiple people, you have more of an intelligence because now you have different perspectives and different things all playing a role. Then everyone is getting that by hearing it from one another. So that's how people grow in societies and communities
Yeah, I
off of
think
ideas.
Yeah, I think perhaps we see ourselves as romantics in whatever idea we may think to be true, and then if we really take a step out of our comfort zone and say, "Hey, Sven, what do you think about this idea?" And then you
Yeah.
completely, maybe you don't disregard my thinking, but you say, "Hey, these are the flaws, these are the strong points. Let's try and either, bring up those strong points or see what we can kind of scrape away the weaknesses of your argument or your idea."
Right.
So I want to end our conversation today. We're 8 minutes in. So
Okay.
let's try to end it in a nice, swift manner. How do
Yeah.
friends engage in thoughtful and insightful conversations, Sven?
Well, it depends on the topic. If you have someone who is thinking about where they're going to go in life or what they want to do, they don't like their job. These are times where you could introduce, philosophies or things where, you give someone a new perspective on how to look about things, how to change their situation. We talk a lot about how to change, you got to change your environment if you want to make changes. And like if you didn't have that perception or perspective and I did and vice versa, then you hearing that would give you that. And I think that bouncing back and forth creates the conversation because then the other person's going to ask questions and then I may even ask questions and vice versa. So I think it just becomes asking questions to each other, which broadens the conversation and makes it deep. Only I guess as deep as you want to go, but yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the big things that I've tried to like employ is like 100% responsibility. So, I mean, obviously that's not totally possible, but at least as much as you can. So, what I try and say is like to people as well is that I feel like you have to extend a hand. Like
Mm,
you are the only controller of like how you engage or if you engage sometimes in thoughtful, insightful conversation. So let's say I want to talk to you about my future wife. Like maybe that will not come up in a normal conversation like if we were just playing Rocket League. I mean, we don't play that much
right.
anymore, but I guess
Yeah.
the idea is that if I want to talk about something, I have to put my foot out in front and say, "Hey, Sven, I want to talk about this." Maybe not in such a blunt manner, but at least kind of roll up to that idea. And then I feel like once you get kind of into that, once you climb the first rung of the ladder, then everything else is kind of like that same process, or it's a little bit easier. Like once you do the first thing, I like to think of it of once you break down the door, sure you might get exposed to everything that's on the other side, but at the same time, you'll be okay.
Well, it's like you can take those things on the other side of the door and utilize it as well.
Yes, very true. So, we're at 10 minutes 35. Sven, is there any last final comments that you want to make? I'll leave the floor to you.
Um, I think kind of just doubling down on what you said. It's like you are your own person. You need to take initiative, and you need to be the one to, provoke and ask the questions or, different things like that. I think that's how you really engage in thoughtful, insightful conversation. It's also about being innocent, and it's about actually having real wonder and not trying to talk to someone like you know what you're talking about or like a debate format because I think that's when a lot of people get stuck in their own ways. So just being open minded. Yeah.
I think that's wonderful, man. Hey,
Yep.
that's a great episode.
Yeah, it was good first one. Yeah.
Yeah, great start to the friendship. And maybe a new
Yes,
a new
sir.
a new rung of the ladder, a new door kicked open. Let's
Yeah.
continue it, my friend.
Yes, sir.